Welcome in to my fellow educated apostates, rogues, rebels, and free thinkers. That is not a complete list, I might add, but it's what comes to mind. People, it is memorial season for Jehovah's Witnesses, otherwise known as Partaker Watch. That's what I've been calling it for a good portion of my life since I was a kid, then a ministerial servant, and then an elder. How many memorials have I been through? I seriously should have added that up before starting to record this episode. God, that is a very, very good question. Let's just say that I've been to a few of them. And I'm guessing that you too have been to a few of them if you're listening. Although some folks who might be listening to Surviving Paradise may have never been to a memorial. Maybe you're just curious. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. You could no doubt feel it was memorial season, or as I said, Partaker Watch, when you looked up in the sky and saw the moon this past weekend. Big, beautiful full moon. It was unbelievable, not a cloud in the sky when I took a peek. And I hear a collective ugh. No, you didn't. You didn't look up in the sky and think, "Oh my God, it's memorial season." Yeah, well, neither did I. Neither did I. In fact, I find myself blown away as the years pass by now that I honestly don't even remember that it's memorial season, despite the fact that I was so heavily involved in it for three quarters, 80, 90% of my life. But I had no clue. Maybe you're somebody who's drugged to the back to the Kingdom Hall now that Jehovah's Witnesses are back in the Kingdom Hall. We all know how family love to do that. They like to get you to memorial. That says that your heart is still inclined towards Jehovah. It's still inclined towards his people, despite anything you might be doing the rest of the year. If you come to memorial, touch a plate of dry crackers and pass some wine, you may just be in line for everlasting life. There's hope. There's hope, people, if you get to the memorial every year. Doesn't matter what you do in the rest of the year. It's all about this. You know, it's funny. You look back, at least in my case, at memorial, and frankly, you come to the grim reality. Well, I don't even know why I'm saying I came to this reality. The truth is, a lot of it is about getting the numbers there. Just get a lot of people. There's a special preaching campaign, at least there was in the past. There's special outreach. There's special pamphlets or flyers. Everybody's trying to get you to this one meeting to hear a complete pile of crap that isn't even accurate or doesn't even follow the Bible, the book that they claim they follow like it's life and death. And I know you know this. But listen, before we talk about Partaker Watch or the memorial, can we spend a few minutes and just talk about this little thing called the Passover? Now, if you're not clear on what the Passover is, the memorial of Christ's death, the Lord's meal, the final supper with his apostles up in the upper room that's become famous was directly attached to Passover. And I think it's worth a deep dive, or at least, as I've stated in the first episode of Surviving Paradise, I'm going to bare my soul. I'm going to share the crazy brain benders and things that I thought of from the time I was a little kid and could connect some dots. And this is one of those perfect examples of this, the memorial and its connection to the Passover. And look, we could go off for another hour, 2 hours on the Passover, Moses, Genesis, Exodus, the Egyptians, whether there was ever an Exodus from Egypt, whether the Jews were ever even there, whether Moses is a real guy. And I truly hope to dig into some of that moving forward. But let's just talk about the Passover, okay? And then we'll get into the memorial itself. I I'll really try to resist the urge to go too deep on this, but we know the event, right? So for those cluing in, just a quick review of the Passover, which of course is somewhat part of the foundation for the memorial and prophetic to Jesus, of course, in that final meal. Here we go. So the God of love, you remember him, the Almighty, the God of love. And before any of you at me on Twitter or social media, those are his words. Not mine. 1 John 4:16. He is the God of love. He is love, the personification of love. Well, the same God was trying to free his people from Egypt. He sent some plagues. You remember some of these plagues? Some of them were animals and fireballs and frogs. And interestingly enough, as I was thinking about this, he sent plagues to torture everyone, including children. Children didn't get a free pass out of these plagues. Uh, One of them was pestilence. Isn't that interesting? So God could start or cause COVID, but he had no interest in stopping it in 2020, 2021. Okay. Subject for another podcast. I digress. Okay. God sends these plagues to Egypt. Everybody gets sick, animals, fireballs, blood in the water. Even children suffer horribly in these plagues. Never mind, God of love, God of love. But in the final plague, I think it really defines him at this point. And I remember as a kid going, huh? Wait a minute, what? So, in this final plague against the Egyptians, Jehovah God was going to just kill, mass genocide, all firstborn children of the Egyptians because, well, those babies had committed some serious sins. They had enslaved his people. Babies. Next time you look at a baby, just remember this Passover story. At this point, he is going to kill all the firstborn children of the Egyptians because Pharaoh won't let his people go to wander out in the desert eventually, become a nation, build them a temple, subject for another day. Nonetheless, God is making his point clear to Moses and his people on the Passover that, hey, look, I'm going to kill all the babies. I'm going to kill all the babies. And I think what's interesting is this isn't the first time God decided he wanted to kill babies. See the flood? Has that been mentioned yet? Worldwide, drowning of everything that moved, including babies, people, innocent animals, puppies. Don't let that shake you up. But nonetheless, sticking to the Passover, because you could tell my adult ADD is kicking in, and you could see where my brain was as a kid. I mean, I am bearing my soul here. The God of love decides he's going to kill all these Egyptian babies. So he tells the Israelites who were enslaved by the Egyptians, I tell you what, go out there, grab a sheep, kill an innocent sheep, and take its blood with a paintbrush. You've seen these religious pictures. And I want you to take the blood and paint it all over the doorpost of your homes. Now, here's where this guy, as a 10-year-old, is going, I'm going to need some clarification on some of this stuff. God tells Moses and his people, okay, I'm going to kill babies, mass genocide, go out and paint these doorposts. In my brain as a kid, and what am I saying? That's a lie. As a grown adult now in this story, I got some questions about this. By painting their doorposts, the angels knew not to kill the babies in that house. Okay? Therefore, the angel of death of innocent babies would, yes, pass over the houses that had blood smears on the door. Okay. You're following me so far? Believe me, we're going to get to the memorial. Two questions here from my youth. And I can tell you this is how this guy's brain was working, even as a young guy before he was a baptized Jehovah's Witness. Let me get this straight. Here's a couple thoughts. The all knowing, almighty God Jehovah, who had created DNA, outer space, had set the planets in their spaces, the stars listened to his every command, the heart beating in your chest as you listen to this podcast right now. He created all that, but Jehovah had a little trouble with directions. He didn't know where his people lived or which houses they lived in. Now, let's be fair. Let's be fair. This was before GPS or Google. Okay, so Jehovah couldn't lean on any of that. But as a 10-year-old, and I'm just picking 10 as a random date of my youth, I wondered, let me get this straight. He can build an ark. He can round up animals on foot from all over the earth somehow. Some guy, this Noah guy, 500 plus years old, is going to, grab a couple lions, drag them across continents, never mind feeding them or dragging them through inclement weather that would kill them. Somehow he did it. But apparently, the same God, DNA, planets, solar systems, stars, Noah, art, apparently he lost his address book on the people that he was actually doing all the baby killing for. So he needed men to paint blood on doorposts so his angels knew to skip that house. 10 years old. This is where my brain's going. So then the other part of me was, hey, look, it wasn't Jehovah. Maybe it was on the angels. Maybe the angels were directionally challenged. Of course, as you get older, you read, Revelation. They're holding back the four winds of destruction. They make animals talk. We go on and on about angels, but maybe they were challenged. I remember even at one point wondering, were these angels that were going to do this passing over houses? Were these the same two guys? Don't ask me where I got two. No clue. Were these the same two angels that thought it was okay for Lot to offer up his daughters for a gang rape back in Sodom? The same two angels that just Lot felt like he had to protect, that, angels that apparently at this point needed a human's help. So there it is, folks. there's my random rant on Passover and the thoughts of a young boy from my little guy brain. But why lie? I can't. I had these thoughts and crazy questions the entire time, even as an elder. You read these accounts of the Passover and there are so many questions that you just can't help but go, what? I mean, what? Okay, there's my rant on the Passover, folks. We'll keep it brief, but I'd love to hear your opinions. But don't at me about the God of love. He said he's the God of love, and he's the guy doing baby killing. Not my thing. Okay, so let's talk about the memorial or Partaker watch. Now you're like, why in the world, Stacey, are you calling this Partaker watch? Let's just be honest. Let's just cut to the chase. If you are going to the memorial of Jehovah's Witnesses and you're not somebody who already has a fast pass to heaven, like you're going to rock it there in heaven with Jesus and the anointed, memorial is drudgery. The most exciting thing that can happen at a memorial of Jehovah's Witnesses, and you know it, if you've been to one, don't tell me I'm alone. I know I'm not. You already knew that the entire evening was going to be taken up with you eyeballing every single passing of the plate and the wine, often called the emblems for those who are unfamiliar, representing Jesus' flesh and his blood, that as these things passed, all you were looking at from the time you were a kid to being a grown adult was who was going to be the person who had the guts to reach onto the plate, nibble on that dry cracker, or take a sip of that wine. And then, of course, meeting ends. The buzz around the Kingdom Hall is one thing and one thing only. Oh my God, so and so is anointed. They're going to heaven to judge us in the near future. Therefore, this guy's coining of the memorial as Partaker Watch. Even from the time you're a kid or an adult, this is what you're watching. It's solemn, it's quiet. You've got all kinds of people packed in there, and all you care about is who's going to be the next guy fast passing it to heaven or the next woman, because you really don't know. And that's what Memorial came down to, particularly in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, is the whole doctrine of Memorial and who goes to heaven and who doesn't changes. Now, if you are a non Jehovah's Witness right now and you're listening to this podcast, thank you. Like and subscribe. But just to give you some background on this, if you're a non JW, and maybe you are a JW, maybe you haven't put any thought to this, that's not that surprising. Jehovah's Witnesses believe that only 144,000 people are going to heaven in all of human history. 144,000. That's a number they take from Revelation. The rest of Revelation, they are more than open to tell you, is nothing more than symbolism and metaphors. They have whole books on it, 3 of them. But that number, bizarrely enough, is literal. Don't ask me to explain that. in a 45-minute podcast. They believe only 144,000 are going to heaven in all of human history. Yes, if you're thinking that through in your head right now, that is only slightly more than Michigan Stadium, the big house in Ann Arbor, Michigan, which seats about 107,000 for football on Saturdays. But look, stay away from the math, okay? You'll be told this by an elder. Stay away from the math. God is mysterious. Or the fact that roughly, as estimated by historians, 117 billion people, billion, have lived on the planet Earth. Near as we can tell, let's be straight. Wasn't a census going on too far back. But of the 117 billion, 144,000 only baptized Jehovah's Witnesses, I might add, are going to heaven. That is the purpose of memorial. Those special people, much like the apostles with Jesus on the night of the Passover or the Lord's evening meal, were a select few that Jesus has personally chosen to join him in heaven to judge the rest of us. So they taught this for decades, that this elite group was accounted for. And this is very important for you to understand. They initially taught that this 144,000 was locked up, all seats taken, in 1881. All of this is in print, folks. Then they taught, oops, Jesus changed his mind. That number, all seats taken for the 144,000, was locked up in 1931. But then, bizarrely as it is, Jesus changed his mind. He got together with the guys in New York, we're not sure how, in 1966, and he changed that date to 1935. So this guy, this podcast host, has grown up most of his life in recognition of the fact that all the seats were taken on the train to 144,000 destination heaven by 1935. Granted, only in recent years have I thought, why is it I never questioned that date? Like, the date is a random ass date pulled out of someone's ass because, well, we'll get to the because. We're going to talk about that a little bit. It was in 1935 at a landmark convention that they split Jehovah's Witnesses into two classes: the anointed going to heaven, which is all the memorial night is really for, and the other sheep, a complete misquote of a verse in John, which was just about Gentiles, but they somehow say it's other Jehovah's Witnesses who aren't going to heaven. They created two classes in 1935. Well, get this. Jesus mixed it up again somehow. I mean, look, Jesus has got a lot going on. And on May 1st, 2007, we found out that he once again spoke to the guys in New York, and poof, 1935 wasn't even a date anymore. Never mind the millions of pages that were printed in the Watchtower and Awake. Never mind the millions of people that were told this. And not just told this, but were told, you're not going to heaven. Your faith and your future is on a paradise earth here among Jehovah's Witnesses. But guess what? You got to be baptized and be a Jehovah's Witness, or you won't be in paradise. We're going to kill you. Those guys, that 144,000, are going to make a decision to wipe you off the face of the earth. So 1935, a date that for decades marked a pivotal moment in the history of Christianity, suddenly in 2007, we got some updated information. And if you let yourself think about it for a few minutes, folk, isn't it a good thing? Isn't it a good thing for the guys, I don't know, that are currently on the governing body today, considering most of them or some of them weren't even born in 1935? So suddenly, without any explanation, people can now start going to heaven. But wait, it's still only 144,000. So how's that work? Lots of questions. So if you are someone who is going, what in the world? And you are curious as to what memorial is, by the way, most of what I just rambled on about, you would literally have a challenge getting that story, that breakdown out of 90% of Jehovah's Witnesses. They couldn't tell you that history. They couldn't tell it to you. They just go to memorial and pass the plate. They literally don't even understand it. So this got very interesting after 2007, and suddenly the heavens gate was opened again. Other people could join. And of course, as you might imagine, for this 54-year-old, at least as of today, getting the yearbook of Jehovah's Witnesses was always something you look forward to every year. And you might ask, well, why is that, Brother Bauman? Well, it wasn't for the annual report to see just how many more hours we'd been knocking on doors. It wasn't to see how many more countries had banned us. It wasn't any of those reasons. Most of us couldn't wait to get the annual report, bust it out, crack it open, get into the column where it said anointed people and how many partook. That's right, ate the dry cracker or sipped the wine at the memorial. And if the number had gone up or down, you might be thinking to yourself, why is that? Let me tell you. When the number was going down for decades, that means the anointed were dying off the earth and going to heaven, which means with everyone that died, we were minutes, seconds, the final part of the final part of the final part of the last days, which meant Armageddon was just about to happen. That's right. The person holding that yearbook, hoping that these anointed people would die faster so that we could get closer to our panda bears, lions, and eating fruit in a nice pair of khakis. If you're wondering what that looks like, just take a look at any Watchtower illustrations of paradise. So, yes, Memorial brings out the best in the Jehovah's Witnesses and in what they teach people. By the way, by coincidence, it's got to be a coincidence. God, there's a lot of sarcasm in this episode. Jesus also told the guys in New York in 2017 that guess what? We no longer need to print this yearbook thing. Stop printing the yearbook. No reason for it. So now Jehovah's Witnesses have to work extra hard to get the number. They aren't as easily able to watch the death race to know just how close to Armageddon we are by counting the anointed dropping off the scene. By the way, they'd struggle with that too because I know this is going to shock you. When Heaven's Gate opened back up, since 1935 no longer mattered, more and more people thought they were going to heaven all of a sudden. Suddenly, there was more anointed people. So the number went from dwindling to spiking. All kinds of people now are joining the 144,000. No word yet on if the 144,000 will grow based on all these people. Going to be tough because remember, that's a literal number in Revelation, not to be confused with seven-headed dragons, harlots riding dragons, blood, guts, birds eating people's bones. Nope, 144,000, rock solid. So, people, it's Partaker watch season. If you're going to the memorial and your brain still resides somewhere in your head, one of the most exciting things to watch now at this point is to look around that Kingdom Hall after the memorial begins, the brothers speaking, the emblems are being passed, and you're just hoping for a glimpse, just a glimpse of who the next heavenly person is, fast tracking their way to judging the rest of us. So, for those listening, those who are familiar with this, I'd love to hear what it is that you miss about this entire experience. But let's go a little deeper in the memorial. So, I think it's interesting. I've got really some unique perspective. And when I say unique, it's not unique because there's lots of other men who grew up as Jehovah's Witnesses, became elders and the like, but it's not the experience of everyone. For example, we all know how Jehovah's Witnesses treat women. They're not allowed to teach. They're not allowed to do any of these things. So as a Jehovah's Witness male, I've got an interesting perspective. I've had the rare experience of being a child, a young boy whose feet couldn't touch the Kingdom Hall floor, but still looking forward to the grand privilege of passing a plate of dry crackers as well as a cup of wine and praying as beads of sweat formed on my forehead that I didn't spill the wine. as I handed it to the person next to me. If you're a JW kid and you're listening, you know what I speak of. You know the nervousness is here they come. They're coming down the aisle, and mom or dad or both are letting me pass and touch the emblems this year. So I was a kid that got to do that. As I grew older, a and became a more responsible brother in the congregation, I was giving what Jehovah's Witnesses call privilege. So, as an attendant, I actually got to be the guy walking up and down the aisle, whether it was as a baptized brother or a ministerial servant, either way, or an elder. I got to pass the emblems. That's right. I got to hand people the plate of dry crackers and the wine. Now, I want to be really straight about something here. This is the best job and the best experience you can have while attending the memorial. This is it. This is the pinnacle, outside of course, being fast tracked to heaven if you decide to nibble on the goods. This, this is as good as it gets. You get to stand at the end of the aisle with each person that touches that plate or passes that wine. You get to watch like an eagle for the next partaker. The person who might dare to say they're going to heaven. Reach for that cracker, drink the wine. As I got older, there was less and less people in the congregations that even thought they were of the anointed. Of course, that's all changing now because, again, the gates open back up. But at this point in time, 80s, 90s, this was as good as it got. Not only did you get to see everything that was going on, but I'm sure if you're a brother or a former brother, you can relate to this. This was such a great time to eye that cute sister, the one that you just are desperately wanting to date, that only has eyes for you. This was it. You're at the memorial, the height of spirituality. You've been entrusted with the emblems. She's adorable. You can't take your eyes off her. And now, for the first time, she gets to see just how important you are. She is seeing her future as the wife of a responsible brother and member of Jehovah's Witnesses. So this is where you get to get that wink in, that smile, catch eyes, all that good stuff. By far and away the best experience for a brother at the memorial. Now, it only gets worse from there because at that point you become an elder. And for me, I became an elder. I gave the memorial talk at one time I remember well, but I'm pretty sure I did it 2 times. And I will tell you, it's the worst job ever. For one, you can't see anything. You're up there on stage. You're very solemn. I'm not, or never thought I was going to heaven or was one of the anointed. So I always felt incredibly humbled to be a lowly earth dweller or hopeful earth dweller talking to anyone that might be going to heaven to judge me. I'm sure you can probably put two and two together on what that does to your brain. I'm up here running this thing like Jesus did, but I'm not going to heaven, but I'm talking to the people that are going to heaven. Yeah, I think that you can put two and two together there and what that does to you. But at this point, you just don't get to enjoy the memorial and all the strange things that come with it. At this point, you're probably with a sister or married as an elder. And so all the fun is gone there of looking like that big shot who's getting to pass her some dry crackers and flirt with her. That's done. You are strictly a spiritual man now. Now, what you're going for typically as an elder, at least for most guys who gave this talk, was hoping and praying that your talk and this night had the biggest attendance anyone had ever seen in the congregation. It was almost like football stats. Well, I got 250 people for my talk. Oh, I only got 230 last year. These conversations truly happen. But at the end of the day, people, when it comes to memorial, as someone who was a kid that attended, an attendant that attended, that sounded stupid, or an elder that gave the talk, nothing beat a new partaker. Nothing beat the shock and the quiet gasp throughout the congregation as brother so and so or sister so and so just bit the cracker. And everybody's looking. You can hear it. You can hear the collective, and man, it is on. It is a highlight of the 20 whatever memorial season. We got a new Partaker watch has come to fruition. Nothing better than that. I'll tell you, I kind of want to wrap this up by just talking a little bit about being an elder, giving the memorial talk, and how you see it as this immense privilege, just an immense privilege. You've arrived. I think giving the memorial, at least in the minds of the people, myself, excuse me, the first time I did it, or in the people watching you do it for the first time or be the chosen speaker, it is the grandest privilege of all, right? It's bigger than the circuit assembly talk you gave. It's bigger than giving the baptism talk. It's bigger than the district convention. You have been chosen miraculously to give this talk to the potential heavenly class and everyone else in attendance, including all our guests. And you are seen as someone who has arrived spiritually. Wrong. I can tell you that in preparing for the memorial as an elder and the elders' meetings, you're focused on attendance, you're focused on getting bodies there. And I will tell you, a ton of planning goes into this thing. There's several meetings that go into the memorial, the elders all hashing out what they're going to do. And I can tell you the talk, which is seen as this incredible privilege, literally every other elder, if they've already given it, begs not to do it again. They want to give it to the new guy, and they'll keep giving it to the new guy if he'll let him get away with it. They see it as heavy. They see it as something they've done once. They don't want to arrange rather all the details that go into giving the memorial talk, locking up the emblems, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And literally no one wants to do it. That was my experience. And I know that I wasn't the only elder that had that experience in the memorial season. So aside from that, the rest of what surrounds memorial season and all the details it's just comical in so many ways. There's a furious effort to suddenly clean and upgrade the Kingdom Hall. Donations are flowing as we try to get the Kingdom Hall looking its very best for the people who have reluctantly been drugged there by parents and family to see this, outside of those that are just curious, or someone from another denomination who sees this as, what's the big deal here? You do it once a year. Where was that commanded in the Bible? Sneaker, it wasn't. So you've got those questions. And then there's this literally gross, hypocritical effort to be loving to strangers and faces and people we haven't seen in forever. As if every other day of the year isn't equally important to be kind or polite. Or why is it we don't go by that person's home or call that person or reach out to that stranger or that homeless person we pass in front of the grocery store? No other time of year is it seen as all that special outside from really good-hearted people than it is during memorial season. Suddenly, that special effort to talk to people and to be kind and to find out how they're doing and to re-engage them in Bible study or whatever other end goal we have for them suddenly becomes very important, despite the fact that the rest of the year was an afterthought. Literally just creeped me out. It was something that really weighed heavy on me the entire time. Actually, I was a ministerial servant and elder, that this wasn't something that was emphasized on a daily basis. And if you had read the Bible, and trust me, many Jehovah's Witnesses have not read their Bibles, folks, they would see that you could sum up everything about their King, Jesus, in his parable of the Good Samaritan, his story of the Good Samaritan, being kind to others when no one else will be. There's a special effort to do that during memorial season, but not so much the rest of the year. Nothing that has the emotion like this night does. Nothing like it. This is the night of the year. And then typically in the past, followed up by a week or some weeks later, they have what's called the special talk. They're closing them. They're using those good sales tactics. Get them to memorial. It's mentioned at the conclusion of memorial. We're going to have this special talk. I'm going to have a whole podcast episode on special talk outlines because they are always the most gruesome and disheartening and awful talks you'll ever hear about how the whole world's going to be destroyed if you're not one of us. Nonetheless, go to Memorial, mention the special talk, follow up in a couple weeks, drag you back to the Kingdom Hall wherever we can, and if it's even remotely possible, and get you re-engaged with Jehovah's Witnesses. But I was always deeply troubled, and I know I'm not alone, by the fact that we put out this massive campaign on this one night. The rest of the time, it never seemed to be as important. It certainly never got the attention that the night of the memorial got. And then, of course, I'll tell you, the one thing about Memorial that I absolutely hated was the parking situation at the Kingdom Hall. If there is anybody listening to this that was an attendant, and it's just for the women listening, you're amazing. So sorry. We have to address it as brothers or men because they're the only ones who get the privilege of doing anything as a Jehovah's Witness. It's so misogynistic. It's beyond disturbing. But if you were a guy or a brother who had to do parking at the memorial, you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about big time. Okay, let's move on. In closing, I got two really funny, quick stories on the memorial, or again, Partaker watch. We had one memorial one year where we had really big attendance. So memorial takes place. This was actually actually I must have done twice because this was one time I gave a talk. Gave the talk. In fact, it was my first time. Gave this talk. The memorial is over. People have left the Kingdom Hall. And one elder, who, by the way, I loved, was very fond of. He's no longer with us. I'm not going to mention names. Uh, Also known for being very jovial, the life of the party, and known for really loving his wine. I'll never forget the shock I got when everybody's out of there. I'm riding the spiritual high I think I was 28, 29 when I gave my first memorial talk, which is absurd in its own right. Again, talking to people that are going to be judging me, potentially, allegedly. But I imagine my shock. I go back to the C school, and this elder is, memorial's over, so he decides it's time to taste the wine. I'll never forget walking in the room, and he's deciding to take a little hit off the wine bottle that literally just moments earlier, within 30 minutes earlier, was seen as Jesus' sacred blood. Now we're just going to have a little sip. Oh, God, the memories. It's insane. There was another one that I thought it's funny. It's not much of a story, but just a memory. Post-memorial, in one of the congregations that I was in, could oftentimes be an epic celebration. Some of the post-memorial parties were, one in particular was really quite famous. It was by a wealthy brother who's now also no longer a Jehovah's Witness and a great guy. But most of the congregation elite, including the elders and ministerial servants and their wives, all bounced from memorial on a night when, of course, we should be reflecting on the incredible sacrifice Jesus gave for the whole world. But, well, let's be honest, just particularly for Jehovah's Witnesses, right? We should be reflecting on this incredibly solemn occasion. But we're having a party. We're having a party at one of the nicer houses, one of the wealthier people in the congregation. And I'll never forget that it was reported. By the way, I was too good to be there at this point. I was that guy for a long time. I really was at home praying and reflecting on the serious solemnness of the occasion and what it meant. So I didn't make it, but it was reported following the party to the elders, most of whom were there, oddly enough, that the wine emblems from the memorial, they made it to the party afterwards. No word yet on the dry crackers. Sorry, folks. But the wine made it. It somehow found its way there. When I was getting in counseling mode, when I heard the story, I was quickly told, hey, Stacy, the memorial was over. The wine no longer symbolized those things. It's perfectly good wine. We don't need to dump it out. So there you go, folks. There's my two quick memorial stories from my time as an elder. Just unbelievable. So I would love to hear what you miss about the memorial or Partaker watch or any amazing stories you might have. I seriously could have talked about this very special night for Jehovah's Witnesses for another hour. But as promised here on Surviving Paradise, we're going to try to have some fun. We're going to try to heal. At times, we'll be serious. At times, we'll shed some tears. We're going to tell serious stories because I can't get away from them. Certainly not personally, as being an elder who was engaged in some pretty serious stuff, helping people with serious stuff. But in this case, I thought on a night when there might even be people who are hurting because of family members shunning them or not being able to talk or communicate with family because they didn't attend the memorial or they chose not to and may be hurting from that. Let's take a good close look at this thing. Really look at the history of this. Really look at what they're asking people to do, what they asked us to do, and sit back, maybe have a little sip of some wine, and really count your blessings for being out of this cult. I would love to hear from everybody on what they miss or maybe some funny stories, maybe even serious stories for Memorial. You can find us on all the regular places, of course. This podcast is going to be on YouTube as well as Spotify, Apple. Find us everywhere. But you can find us on Twitter and on Instagram at Surviving Paradise. So, folks, I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for indulging me. There are more episodes coming, so like, subscribe, and always give us feedback. We are all the same people. And I just want to share, I'm not on a fast track to heaven. Despite that 1935 thing moving, I'm still holding out hope maybe for panda bears. That's not true either. Thanks for joining us, folks. And we look forward to talking or seeing or visiting with all of you on the next episode of Surviving Paradise.